All right, let's move on to our next spot here, and that's the aforementioned Texas Longhorns. You just mentioned Oklahoma. They have Texas on deck. So are they caught looking ahead? I don't think so after a loss, but maybe. Texas escapes Texas Tech. Now they host TCU before that huge Oklahoma game. Is that a wake-up call for Texas? Or is it, hey, we got by, we have Oklahoma next week, and maybe they come out a little flat and get caught looking ahead. Historically, it's not a great spot for our boy Herman as a favorite. TCU at BetMGM right now is an 11.5-point underdog over under 62.5. I can tell you that I took some TCU plus 13. I like them anything double digits here. It's a great spot for them, but more importantly, this goes back to just, some of this has to be narrative based early in the year in this unprecedented college football year. And the jump from week one, your first game to your second game, I think can be significant, especially if you have a good coaching staff, which TCU does. They also were starting, a former walk-on at quarterback to start the game. He was not efficient. Max Duggan did end up coming on, playing a lot, and he played a lot better. And the offense looked a lot better when he was on the field. In that game, TCU gave up a ton of explosive plays to Iowa State, runs of 80, 45, 50. So that's something that I think they can clean up. From an efficiency standpoint, the defense was okay. So I think TCU's being, they have a lot of Texas hype, and Texas did escape last week. So I don't think that they got downgraded enough. But that defense, I have to have a lot of questions about it after last week. And I think TCU with Duggan playing the whole game, which I expect him to do from the start, and then Patterson cleaning up some things on that 4-2-5, which does have really experienced linebackers and does have really experienced safeties. So I think it'll just be a couple things to clean up here and there. I expect a much better and cleaner performance from the TCU defense. Thoughts here?
I have no money on this game yet, and I think the reason is because I'd like to know if Max Duggan is going to play the entire game. Can he handle an entire load? He's only been practicing 10 days coming off of a procedure, and we don't know if that's controlling how many drives that he can actually physically go in and take. You expect that to be, resolved with some conditioning after 2 or 3 weeks. Downing was not good, like you said, in the first half, and then Duggan came in. We're talking 16 of 19 for 241 yards, 3 TDs and an INT. TCU had 7 passes over 20-plus yards against Iowa State. That's some explosiveness we haven't seen from a quarterback in quite a while in Fort Worth. And Iowa State, they stuffed 17 of 38 TCU rushing attempts, which is well over the national average. So I don't expect Patterson to kind of go back to the rush. I think the passing is where it's going to be. The TCU offensive line is just kind of a disaster. Not only can they not run block, and they got stuffed almost half the attempts, they can't protect the quarterback. They're one of the worst in the nation in hurries and adjusted sacks. So, TCU averaged 24 seconds per play. Texas is now at 22.3 seconds per play. So that's the reason why you've seen kind of an inflated total at 62.5 at BetMGM and rising, because this is just going to be up and down the field. And I think that, kind of gets into the stats that we're seeing out of TCU from a finishing drives perspective. So finishing drives is how many points did somebody put up after they crossed the 40-yard line? And Iowa State just had a field day with this. They averaged 5.3 points per trip past TCU's 40-yard line. TCU's defense becomes non-existent when teams get into scoring position. Now, if we know anything about Texas, they weren't explosive at all last week. I think they had 2 explosive drives out of maybe, over a dozen drives that they had. But they did have a ton of drives with 2+ first downs. So typical Sam Ehlinger, we're moving the chains, running, high tempo, but we're not really being explosive. So for me, this is a live bet after Downing's done his series before Duggan comes in. I hate to call it like a day trader on the stock market, but I want all of this team when Duggan's under center, and I want none of this team when Downing's playing.
Yeah, I'm taking a leap of faith and assuming that he's going to play for most of the game, if not all of it. But you could be right, and he wasn't game fit for week 1. That's why he didn't play the whole game. So I am taking a leap of faith here. But I will say, there's certain coaches where I love that, and I've made a lot of money doing this. The narratives fit. The emotional coaches. It's the Tomlins and the Hermans. And we see these spots where time and time again, right? Herman as an underdog, he gets his team up when you don't think that they can compete. Herman as a big favorite against a team, and they come out and lay an egg, right? Same with Tomlin. Happens all the time. So even though Texas did get a scare last week, if they would have lost that game, maybe it's a different story. They still escape, and they still have Oklahoma on deck. There's still, this team that was hyped and getting a lot of hype, I still think could come out flat. We've seen it before from Herman's teams in the past, so it wouldn't shock me if we see it again.